Hey folks, Jim Denham here. Hey, last week I shared an image that went over really well. I just said that sometimes I just like to play, and a lot of people really liked the effect that I did on the image and liked the image itself. So I wanted to share a little bit about it. First thing here, we'll go back to Lightroom and we'll look at the before picture. This is what the image looked like. This is off the side of a road, off the highway, in between my mother's house and here. It's just nowhere, but I noticed all this grass that was dormant and laying over the top of these trees, and I thought it looked really good. I also liked the way these trees were really vertical and spaced out. I thought it really looked good, and it lended itself to this effect. That is basically this shot right here, where we've blurred the top and used it with this grass in the bottom. So what I've done here is I've loaded the image into Photoshop, and to show you where we've come so far, this is the image straight out of Lightroom, and then in this group I just basically added a curves layer that added some contrast, and then a hue saturation layer that brought out some of the color in the grass. I thought that was important, so I put that in a group, and then I did another group here, which is basically my Orton effect, where I did a Gaussian blur with multiply blending mode, and then did a screen, and then a high pass sharpening. So I've done all that, and that's where we're at. I've basically made a copy, a merge layer from everything that's been created, and put it here. So from here I just want to show you how we apply this blur and where we're going for. You would go up to filter. Whoops, sorry, I got to go up on the active layer here. There we go. Filter, blur, motion blur. Now the key to doing the motion blur like what we had before is right here where it shows the angle. You want that pretty much at 90. Straight up and down is what you're looking for, because that gives the straight up and down motion. And usually between 400 and 600 is what I understand works really good. This one around 438 works. That's about where I had it set. You can see it really gives a beautiful movement in there, you know, from the bottom to the top of the image. And then we hit OK. Obviously this is not where, you know, we stopped here. So in order to, you only want to apply it to a certain part of the image. So you click on the layer, you go down here and add a, oh crap, I hit you've hit a layer mask, added a layer mask here, okay, and then we want to hide the blur. So we hit Command I to invert the layer. So now we've got a black layer, so it's concealing the motion blur that we've added, okay. And with a white color over here on your palette, you go up and hit the gradient tool, which is what we've done here, and you want the gradient to be to a transparency, and then pick about where you want to drag the gradient tool. You also want this first box here checked, the gradient box on the left there, and then you hold shift and drag down about where you want the blur, and that's how it puts it in there. And then you can play with this and see exactly how far you want to go, but you can see that's how it applies that blur. And you can see in your layer mask up here that the blur is only applied to the top part of the image and the rest of it is left alone. And from there what I would do is I would create another group or another merge layer. My computer is a little slow, so I apologize for that. And then the way I finish this off in Photoshop is I would add a couple of curve layers, excuse me, and I would darken certain portions, use it to sorry, it's trying to get to there. There we go. And I would whoops, went a little far. But I would darken certain parts of the image, and it's still kind of giving a little problem there. Let's see. There we go. I can't ever get it right. It takes a little bit. That's pretty good. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm looking for the shadows. I'm looking for these areas, trying to get them darker. And what I'm going to do is also invert that and then take a brush and come in and start painting them into the shadows. And that'll make a really nice dark shadow area, especially back here around these trees and to the bottom of the grass area here, to where the grass stands out really big. That's what we're trying to do here. Now the good thing about applying the curves layer instead of, well, I like doing it with the curves layer instead of like a dodge and burn, because I can go over here and I can grab this and I can still adjust this and make it where I put it where I want it. Okay, and then from there I'll add another curves layer, and for that I'm going to go for the grass and I'm going to brighten it up. Alright, that's pretty good right there. But then I'll also invert it, grab a brush, and start brushing it on the grass. That way the grass gets brought out, and it's nice, adds some really nice contrast in the image. And I also will grab like this tree and this tree that's closest to you and try to bring those out just a little bit, because that's where, you know, we want a little bit of that left in the image. But basically there you go. We've highlighted the grass here and we've darkened up the shadows here, and only thing I want to do now is I want to add just a standard curves, and I use this picking tool here, and I'll brighten the image and add a little contrast to where there we go. Well, I'm not getting it dark enough here. Let me do this, and then we'll darken it down. There we go. Now we got it. And that's a really nice effect there. That gets that grass really stand out really good. And that's basically all you do in Photoshop. Now, granted, we've got some things here we need to fix. It's not level on the horizon here, so we've got it tilted to a certain extent. And I really kind of want this tree in the center, but I'll usually do that in Lightroom. So I'll just go and save this here in Photoshop, and then I'll go back to Lightroom and make those final adjustments to get to the image we want in the end. So we'll let this go ahead and save, and then we'll go attack it in Lightroom. Okay, so we're back here in Lightroom, and the image is ready here. The first thing we want to do is I want to go ahead and apply this crop. Now my main thing here is I want to get this tree centered, because it's kind of my focal point of the image. And I also want to kind of reduce the amount of light up here, because that's really distracting having that much. I want some of that because I think it's important, but I'm just going to bring this down to about right there and then shift it over to where that tree is in the middle, and we've taken some of this light out. I also want to try to level this a little bit, so just kind of click and grab. That looks pretty good. We'll hit enter, and we've got it. Now one thing that I do want to do is I want to take a little bit of that saturation out, because it's just a little overdone. I'm going to add just a little bit more contrast, because I like the contrast. And then one thing that I like to do, sharpen. Now go ahead and put a pretty good heavy dose of sharpening in here, just because I think it looks right with the image. And then I'll mask it off a little bit to where mainly all the sharpening is going to be down here. And then I want to go to the effects. I want to add a vignette. Now, the reason I'm adding a vignette is to give a little bit darker around the edges, mainly down in this part, but I want it to be darker altogether, and then just for good measure take a radial mask, invert it in effect, and then just raise the exposure in the middle part here up, because we want the eye drawn more toward this middle part than we do anything else. And that's really all there is to it. Now, it's not going to be exact. Right there's the original, and right there's the repeat. But you can see that's how this image was made. It really, I like the way it brings out this grass, but also the blur kind of really works with these trees that are straight up and down. And it's a pretty neat effect. And so that's how I did it, and thought you guys might enjoy seeing that. So there you have it. Got any questions? Leave them down below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See ya.